Live from London, this is Global Business.
Is your business ready to survive the next big crisis?
IMD Business School says that the economic threats of political wars, inflation and investor confidence have changed prospects for success of the world's largest companies.
Our business correspondent Juliet Mann has the story. Juliet.
Thanks, Jamie and Robin. Well, firms of all shapes and sizes need to stay nimble in a world of change. And this study from IMD looks at how companies adapt to the new external shocks to their supply chains and operations. Their resilience is measured by their future readiness. Now, zoning in on electrification, it's Tesla, Toyota and Volkswagen. They're the most future-ready companies in the automotive industry. Now, the report also looked at financial services and the financial services rankings. Fortunes flipped this year from fintech to big banks who prioritised innovation and digitisation. Well, Professor Howard Yu from the International Institute for Management Development is the author of the report. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Now, first of all, when you're putting this ranking together, what are you looking for?
Well, if you're thinking about future readiness, it's almost an organizational climate. To be future ready, your core business needs to be still healthy. Otherwise, there's no resources to invest in the future. So we look at financial fundamental. We're looking at the board diversity. How diverse is the board, the management team? Because that allows an organization to think outside the box. We're looking at new product rollout, as many things you just described, but we're also looking at debt to cash ratio. We're looking at the ESG result. And last but not the least, of course, is business diversity, whether there's geographical diversity or business diversity, because that translates to a sense of resilience. So think about this as a balanced scorecard.
You talk about thinking outside the box, in which case, why has fintech slipped?
Well, it is a macroeconomic environment. So back in 2021, when we're looking at our ranking, companies like PayPal or Block, formerly Square, are doing extraordinarily well together with many fintech disruptors, those unicorns. But the easy money is drying up. Inflation is on the rise. Investors are looking at earnings demonstrated by companies. In this environment, if you are simply a one-trick pony, the so-called unicorn is no longer as alluring. This is why we see the shuffle between fintech versus big banks.
And big banks who are looking at digital innovation. But I want to talk autos with you. Tesla, big surprise at the top. But China's BYD, now that's been an interesting story, hasn't it?
It's a very, very interesting companies, because if you're looking at the whole global auto industry, as you mentioned earlier, Toyota has managed to escape in 2021 because they stockpile, but eventually whatever you store up would deplete. But BYD is one of these rare companies that are actually self-sufficient. It makes their own chipset. It also supplies to other car makers within China as well. Look, if you're thinking about auto industry, the future capability is not about electric drivetrain alone. Everyone can make an EV, but it's software demonstrated by Tesla, or design of chipset, or manufacturing chipset yourself. These are capability relevant for the future, and BYD, as a relatively unconventional player, really harness and harbor these new capabilities.
Professor Howard, Yu, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Great to be here.